Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
We're going to begin at the beginning of chapter 6, and we're going to lean in at the end of chapter 6. Vaydaber Adonai Moshe limor. God speaks to Moshe. Daber b'nei Yisrael ve'amarta aleim ish v'isha. We're getting a case here. If we have a case where a man or a woman takes a vow, and that vow is to be what is called a nazir, they are obligated by that vow. So the nazir is the Nazarite, because they don't translate it, right? This is what they call it from the verb lahazir, to distinguish oneself in certain ways. In this case, ladonai, for sacred purposes. If one does this, then what that means is, when one becomes a nazir, what means is that they shall abstain from wine and other intoxicants. They shall not drink vinegar of wine or of any other intoxicant. Neither shall they drink anything in which grapes have been steeped, nor eat grapes fresh or dry. Throughout this term as a Nazirite, they may not eat anything that is obtained from the grapevine, even seeds or skin. Throughout the term of their vow as a Nazirite, no razor shall touch their head. It shall remain consecrated until the completion of their term as a Nazirite of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, the hair of their head being left to grow untrimmed. Throughout the term that they have set apart for Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, they shall not go in where there is a dead person. Even if their father or mother or their brother or sister should die, they must not become defiled for any of them, since hair set apart for their God is upon their head. Throughout their term as a Nazirite, they are consecrated to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. If someone dies nearby, defiling the consecrated hair, the Nazirite shall shave the head at the time of becoming pure, shaving it on the 7th day. On the 8th day, that person shall bring 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting. The priest shall offer one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, and make expiation on the person's behalf for the guilt incurred through the corpse. That same day, the head shall be reconsecrated, and that person shall be rededicated to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, the term as Nazirite, bringing a lamb in its first year as a penalty offering. The previous period shall be void, since the consecrated hair was defiled. This is the ritual for the Nazirite. On the day that the term as a Nazirite is completed, the person shall be brought to the entrance of the tent of meeting. As an offering to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, that person shall present 1 male lamb in its first year without blemish for a burnt offering, 1 ewe lamb in its first year without blemish for sin offering, 1 ram without blemish for an offering of well-being, a basket of unleavened cakes of choice flour with oil mixed in, and unleavened wafers spread with oil, and the proper meal offerings and libations. The priest shall present them before Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh and offer the sin offering and the burnt offering, and shall offer the ram as sacrifice of well-being to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh together with the basket of unleavened cakes. The priest shall also offer the meal offerings and libations. The Nazirite shall then have the consecrated hair shave the consecrated hair at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and take those locks of consecrated hair and put them on the fire that is under the sacrifice of well-being. The priest shall take the shoulder of the ram when it has been boiled, 1 unleavened cake from the basket, and 1 unleavened wafer, and place them on the hands of the Nazirite after the consecrated hair has been shaved. The priest shall elevate them as an elevation offering before Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, and there shall be a sacred donation for the priest, in addition to the breast of the elevation offering and the thigh of gift offering. After that, the Nazirite may drink wine. Such is the obligation of a Nazirite, except that those who vow an offering to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh of what they can afford, beyond their Nazirite requirements, must do exactly according to the vow that they have made beyond their obligation as Nazirites. So we get this interesting beginning to chapter 6 about somebody who voluntarily chooses, male or female, voluntarily chooses to enter into a different relationship to the understanding of what it means to be holy, right? To be part of a holy people, to be part of a holy nation, to be holy by fulfilling divine law. This is a voluntary taking on of another level, another layer of observance in order for some reason to be closer to some sense of limitation in life that is somehow about Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, somehow about a relationship to the divine. What's interesting to me about this is that this is an unusual condition for us as a people. that, right, one doesn't normally refrain from drinking intoxicants or anything like that in order to have a life that is more in line with what we would call holiness.
Asceticism is not.
Asceticism is just not part of the Jewish, and forget Jewish, Israelite experience of what it was to be holy. So there's this interesting exception to that. And if you do research on this, there's some theories that for some people, sometimes it might have been necessary to refrain from something that maybe one was doing a little too much, right? So one way to deal with overindulgence is to say, I'm going to pick a period of non-indulgence. And lining that up as a sacred practice, helps one maintain one's refraining from something, but also so it strengthens one's commitment to that practice, puts it in a perspective that is, for many people, if you think about a 12-step program, right, the first step is turning it over to a higher power, right? So there seems to be still, right, a real human connection to making something that's hard to do part of a practice about relating to something bigger, because it's hard. So some folks want to say this is maybe an ancient way of dealing with overindulgence. And that is to say, I'm going to take a time where I don't indulge at all. What the rabbis point out about the Nazarite, and if you'll recall, who's the most famous Nazarite we have?
Jesus.
Not Jesus.
One of the disciples?
No.
Samson. King David? Or Solomon?
Sam got it. Sam's right. Samson.
Oh.
Do you remember about his hair? That is because Samson was a Nazarite. So he was forbidden to cut his hair, right? And it was a source of great, a sign of commitment, right? Like this, it was something to be proud of that one had fulfilled one's Nazarite-ness, hood, whatever. And so, right, when Delilah cuts it, she has gone, we talk about it as his strength, but what she's done is she's taken his consecrated hair that is forbidden to be cut and has cut it off, right? So it is a violation of his relationship in that period to the divine
And his identity.
So it's a very serious act, right?
It's almost like a castration.
So it's saying I have the power to take away something from you that is an indicator of the strength of your commitment and relationship to the divine.
Is that where the refraining from cutting a child's hair until they're, what, three or something? Does that come from the Samson story or no? Elsewhere?
Yeah, no.
But the Nazarites were not Hebrews, so they were.
Yeah.
They were?
Yeah.
Oh,
the condition you put yourself in is taking the vow to become a Nazarite for a period of time. It can't be permanent, right? That's not an option.
They would not be Philistines. There's some other people that live in the area.
It's a terrible translation because it sounds like that. I mean, it sounds like Moabite, right? It sounds like a nation, but it's not. It's just because they don't know what to do with the word Nazir. Rather than translate it into refrainant from intoxicant, right? They just take the Hebrew Nazir and put it in English letters and Nazirite. So, but this is an Israelite who has decided to go this extra step. What's interesting to me also is that at the end of the period, if they fulfill it, so we get told what happens if you accidentally come out of that state because you are dealing with corpse contamination. You're not supposed to, even for a family member, you're not supposed to, as a Nazir, be exposed to corpse contamination. But let's say someone dies and they're in the same tent as you now have suffered corpse contamination. So we get told what to do if that happens. If you come out of that state accidentally, you just rededicate, right? You have to fix it. You have to deal with that. And then you rededicate and then you finish out the term. But even if you don't have it interrupted and you just finish out the term, it's interesting that the person has to bring a sin offering. So lots of folks want to talk about the fact that not only can't you do it forever, but you have to bring a sin offering, even if you've done what you said you were going to do. So for the rabbis, like, they are very clear that becoming a Nazirite is not for everybody, and it's not the ideal. It seems to be something some people want to do, and it's okay. And then you have all the rules and whatever about how you do it, but you have to bring a sin offering at the end of it.
How long? There's no length of period of them to.
Yeah, you the person does.
Person created. It's up.
Yeah.
The sin offering is what happens. It needs totally burnt, or
That's an olah. The patat, the olah is completely burned up. This is not that.
what happens?
Parts of it get burned and parts of it don't. Yes.
Were they associated only with the temple period, or what happened to these Nazarites?
Yes, it was only in biblical Israel, in the temple period. Right.
It just disappeared.
Yeah. What rabbinic tradition did not carry forward any sense of being a Nazarite.
Do you think that the Christian monks took a page from this?
My bet is asceticism is its own thing.
Yeah.
I think what this is a biblical Israelite nod to that, to the antecedents of, monks. That there are traditions in the ancient world that celebrated asceticism and withdrawal from physical pleasures. And I think this is biblical Israel's nod to that for people among the Israelites who wanted that, right? To prevent people who were drawn to that from leaving the Israelite,
Basically said you can do this for a short.
You can do it for a little while.
Get your taste of it.
Do what you need to do, and then come back and make kiddush with everybody else.
It's supposed to have an impact on a person for the rest of their lives if they did it too, I would imagine.
I don't know. What I know is it was not normative, but biblical Israelite practice made room for a taste of it.
That seems to be a human motivation to say, I need to do this, whether it's Lent or fasting or Sajja in India or, whatever. Every culture has this, going out in the tent 48 days in the desert.
What's interesting is it's not mandated. Yom Kippur is, right? Fasting is on certain times, and rabbinically fasting, there's a lot of fast days in Judaism. So rabbinically, that gets institutionalized and is mandated, but this is not, right? This refraining from cutting the hair, from, drink, needing to remain in a pure state, like that is not mandated for everybody ever.
I think there's another way of looking at it too, in terms of what you're saying about motivation. In a sense, in a very overall sense, there's a kind of, what can I say, a refrain that is not on the surface, but it pervades, I think, so much of Judaism, and is very different from Christianity, in that for Judaism, there is a sense of, it sounds crazy when I say it, but Judaism is, back up. The issue, I think, has to do with the notion of an Oedipal victor.
That what?
The notion of being an Oedipal victor and how one...
An Oedipal victor.
As an Oedipus.
Yes, I understand.
And all of the anxiety and guilt and fear and punishment that goes with that. There's a constant refrain that seems to come up throughout all of the Torah. It has to do with hints of a kind of an ancient, what can I call it? A kind of totemic feast, which is the totemic feast is an expiation of guilt for the Oedipal victory, having killed the totemic father, eaten the totemic father. So that from that point of view, Judaism, in a sense, identifies with the Father, identifies with God, and does not feel the sense of guilt about the relationship to God that is endemic in Christianity, which is a different kind of religion in that Christianity is essentially a religion of the healing of guilt and sin and reparation that has to be made for having been an Oedipal victor, for having killed God and killed the Father. So I think that there's a kind of an underlying hint.
So what is the refraining from it here?
Refraining. I really don't know about how to get into all of the details, but I think that the main issue in refraining has to do with the notion of asceticism. Asceticism being kind of a disavowal of any kind of pleasure, which is a kind of self-castration out of guilt and out of a need to protect against the attack from the defeated father.
I think it's interesting that when one refrains from drinking, one is also forbidden from shaving the hair. So it's an asceticism, but it's also very visible to the community. So you are sort of announcing to the community that you have taken on this
Easily identifiable.
Yeah. Easily identifiable, and also easily, I guess, it could be very motivating to other people in the community to see the hair unshaven. And then at the end of it, it's a festive. I guess this offering could be kind of festive, right?
It's interesting.
So there's like a positivity, I think, or a publicness about the commitment.
Is it purifying?
That's not language that's used.
When I think of it, I go,
on the body, that it's not like the.
There's not language.
What's the motivation for someone to do this?
There's not language.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know.
It seems to me psychologically that what you're saying is the motivation is a guilt of some kind of a wanting to, absolutely.
The state of being is an extreme.
I didn't read it.
Difficult
state. It's fascinating what you're saying, but I didn't read guilt into this.
Right. So, we would have to read motivation into this because it's not here.
Not there.
And Torah doesn't seem interested in the motivation,
just the process,
or what it does, or anything else. Torah seems to be very concerned that there's a limit, right? And here's what you do to mark it. Here's what you do if you step out of it. Here's what you do to reconsecrate if you step out of it. And here's what you bring at the end of it to close it off. That is what Torah is concerned about, right? And that's not unusual for Torah. Torah doesn't talk a lot about motivation.
But it's interesting that Torah doesn't talk about motivation
at all. And so I did that as a run up to what comes next because it's an interesting transition, right? Right after the Nazarite brings their offerings, by Daber Adonai Moshe Lemor, God speaks to Moshe again. Daber el Aharon ve'el banav lemor. Speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, Ko tivarchu et bnei Israel. Thus shall you bless the people of Israel. And here we get, yes, Bert, look at that. I went there. And now we get, thus shall you bless the people of Israel. And this is what Aaron and his sons are supposed to say. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Right? May God bless and protect you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka. May God light up God's face towards you and gracify you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God lift God's face towards you and put on you peace. V'samu et shemi al bnei Israel v'ani avarchem. So they shall put my name on the people Israel, and I will bless them. All right. So this putting of the name of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh onto the people is the intention with this. And it is very clear that it is God who is commanding it, and it is God who affects the bracha, not the priests. Right? The priests bless on behalf of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. It is Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh who affects the blessing. This is a very important distinction for us, as in all things regarding the priesthood, right? That it is not the priests who have the power, let's say, to bless. It is God who has the power to bless. The priests are to utter these words that God has commanded them to say. And the words are all about Yud He Vav He, right? But there's nothing in the priest's self that enables the priest to bless the people. It is God, right?
That is a priestly benediction.
Because it was the priest who would say this benediction over the people on behalf of God. And so it's a function, right, of the priesthood that on behalf of the divine, they bless the people. It's a really powerful bracha. We use it a lot, and it's very, very old. It's an old blessing. We use this every week at the bar and bat mitzvah, at the Friday night table. This is the bracha that the parent gives to the child. And so what's interesting to me is that one of the most special blessings, and we don't get a lot of liturgy in Torah, by the way, you'll notice. We just don't get liturgy. We get instruction. We don't get prayer. We don't get words of liturgy. We've made Shema liturgy. It's not in Torah. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad is not a prayer. That is just a sentence of Torah that we've turned into liturgy. This is liturgy, as is, when you bring your first fruits and say, my father was a wandering Aramean. That's liturgy that we have from this period. So this is a very old text. Yeah.
I think it's helpful that what you just said is the covenant, because you hear this priestly blessing all the time. It just becomes words. That's what you're beginning. You framed it with an intentionality and awareness of these special things.
Yeah. And to that point, that's what I was going to say is that to do that at the Friday night table, if you think about where it comes from, how special it is that we have liturgy from that long ago, God commands these words to be spoken by the priests over the people. It's interesting to me, anthropologically, that we do it at the dinner table, right? Like, you would think it's so woo that only on Yom Kippur, would the cantor chant this over the people, but it's actually the opposite. However big it must have once been as a ceremony of some kind. We're not told when, we're not told how, right? However big it must have been, it's dafka that we've taken for parents to say over their children every Friday night. I find that fascinating, that it wasn't preserved, as this really special thing that only gets done in the synagogue publicly over the people once a year. It's parents blessing their children, right? And so how powerful for me, a reminder that we are to be a nation of priests, that we are to bless our children the way the priests blessed the people. We are to be a nation of priests.
But the parents need to have the same kavanah. In other words, they can't simply be transmitting God's blessing. They themselves need to have the kavanah of blessing their children, right? In other words, I don't know, you could have a situation where on Shabbat, the children get the blessing, and then, the day after something happens where, for one reason or another, the parents are not kind to their children or something like that. So where's the sense there?
Well, okay. So Torah doesn't care about kavanah. So should we offer this with kavanah? Of course. Right. Doesn't matter.
No, I know. I'm not.
Doesn't matter.
I shouldn't say it.
Right. The role of the parent on Friday night is the role of the priest, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. That we didn't preserve priesthood. We have in some ways, right? That the first Aliyah to Torah is a Kohen in traditional settings. The next one is Levi, right? So we have the Kohen can't go into a cemetery because they'll get corpse contamination in a time where there is no way to purify anybody from corpse contamination. It's a fascinating thing. So we do have remnants of keeping it separate. But I love that our tradition moved instead to the table is your altar, and you are priests at that table. And you utter the words of the priest over your children.
When did it come about that the first line of that benediction to Ephraim and Manasseh, maybe like Ephraim and Manasseh, where does that appear in the Torah?
No, it's rabbinic.
Rabbinic. So how did we end up adding that on? Because we do it every Friday night over our kids, but we start with that.
It's the rabbis. The rabbis
they just
add it.
Added it on to the this.
Yeah, because Ephraim and Manasseh are the first two appearances of brothers in the Torah that don't fight and try to kill each other. So may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh, like may you not be like Joseph and his brothers. May you not be like Yaakov and Esav. May you, is the implication. But Ephraim and Manasseh were the two brothers, the children of Joseph, who presumably got along. We don't know if they got along. What we know is they didn't try to kill each other, which was like the first Cain and Abel. I mean, go all the way back. Everybody's tried to kill each other all the way back, brothers. And there's that beautiful interpretation of Torah where it says, when Cain says to God, when God says, where's your brother Hevel? And Cain says, am I my brother's keeper? Right? There's a rabbinic tradition that says the rest of the Torah is the answer to that question. So, so that's the question and the theme. So Ephraim and Manasseh are the first two who don't have that.
And then was it the Reform movement or Reconstruction movement that added for the girls? It may be like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah.
I don't know when that all became liturgy. I'd have to pull my elbogan off the shelf and look it up, which I'm happy to do. So I'm not sure if they both evolved at the same time.
Yeah.
It might be that they came at the same time, because may God make you like Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah is pretty standard language.
You mentioned, and I don't want to go off on a tangent. This is where you want to.
We're in Torah study there. No such thing as a tangent.
But you did mention this corpse contamination, and I just think it's very interesting way, and that in the context also of the Kohens being prohibited from being near a corpse. I just think it's a very interesting way to talk about, something that's very much part of our life, that people do die and there are dead people among us. Like, we must be in the presence of the dead at some point in our lives. And I just thought it was very interesting.
Say more?
No, I don't know that I have more. I just, so it creates, I think, kind of a very death negative paradigm.
Okay. So that's what I was after. Tum'ah is a condition that we all have to be in. You're in it after childbirth. You're in it after menstruation. You're in it after a wet dream at night as a man. It is a condition that we're all in. Some attribute it to the proximity of death to life, that there's a change in us when we are closer to death in life. And that's a condition that is respected and honored as other, right? So you respect that because being pure is regular. Being impure is being other. So it just honors that we are sometimes other. I don't know about you, but after childbirth, hello, other, right? I'm still not regular from losing Judy. Like it's just, but I mean, I'm just saying the tradition honors that when we confront death in life, it does something to us that makes us not regular. So it's not death negative. No, that's what I'm trying to say. It's not bad. It's other and irregular.
Wait, and the term in Hebrew is what you said? Just like
tameh and tahor. Tahor and tameh. So one is regular, one is irregular.
What is irregular?
Tameh. So I appreciate that our tradition has always honored the impact of proximity to death in life by saying you are now not regular. So let's respect that and not have you do regular things, right? It gets translated, I think, into our mourning practices. The things you don't do during Shiva, the things you don't do during Shloshim. It's not because you're bad and death is bad or negative. It's that you are dysregulated. And so we're not going to force you to go shopping and try to do the things normal people in their regular lives do.
But we talk so infrequently, I think, about death and that.
Correct.
And I think we're reading this sounds death negative to an uninitiated.
Correct. So that's why we study. And so it's important to bring up because it's really important to disabuse people of the notion that this is death negative. It's not. But if you're a Nazir, you're not allowed to get dysregulated, right? Because you're in a state of needing to do something that people who are dysregulated don't do. They don't bring offerings. They need to be separated, right? Okay.
So why do you think this priestly blessing is stuck in here?
Wonderful.
What a segue.
What a segue. So I did not make a bunch of these because that's one text. That's one packet.
Oh, okay.
That's one packet.
Oh.
I did not make a bunch of these. We're going to look at it on the screen. Okay. It's 7 pages. I didn't feel like making a bunch of them, but for someone who can't see the screen or somebody who just desperately needs to follow the text, I've made a few copies. All right. So let's go. I'm going to show you. It's okay. It's coming. It's online. Okay. So looking at the text, so it is very, very old. An archaeological find in a burial chamber in Ketef Chinom, south of the old city of Jerusalem, shows that this blessing goes at least as far back as the 7th century BCE, when the first temple still stood before the Babylonian exile. 2 tiny folded silver scrolls with different versions of this blessing and some other fragments of verses were discovered, each including the words, may Yud He Vav He bless you and guard you. May Yud He Vav He make God's face shine upon you. This is the oldest text ever found that occurs in the Hebrew Bible. The scrolls must have been used as amulets by ancient Israelites more than 2,600 years ago. And here we go, right? So this is what it's like when it's found. I need to move y'all out of my way. How do I get you out of my way? Okay. Amulet 1 from Ketef Chinom measured just 1 inch in height and 0.4 inches in diameter before being unrolled. So it's tiny. It's tiny, right? The first mezuzah. This is exactly what it is. It's, I mean, if you believe mezuzah was originally some kind of warding, protecting, whatever, yes. And I believe that. I believe mezuzot at the entrance was absolutely about some kind of protective warding at the passageway between the world and your sphere. And I believe these are too. And we know from the archaeological record and from rabbinic tradition, we know incantations were worn, and later the names of God in Kabbalah and stuff were worn as amulets.
What are they wrapped in? First, it looks like it's
silver.
Oh, it's silver?
It's silver.
Oxidized silver.
When unrolled, the 2 ancient amulets from Ketef Chinom revealed, don't in my way, miniature writing that had been painstakingly inscribed on them. Researchers discovered that the inscriptions included blessings similar to Numbers 6:24 through 26. So if you can see this, so this is so small that the work it would have taken to write those words on this was its own craft. There's also a craft in Egypt and in ancient Israel in that region of microcalligraphy on stone. So this is tiny calligraphy, right?
Do you know what that's used in writing?
I don't. I haven't done enough research to know what the craft was. But lapidaries would use micro engraving on stone, right? As another way of, marking something, right?
What is a lapidary?
Tools.
Person works with stones and gems.
No electric tools, no computers.
Exactly. What you say?
It's art on rice, grains of rice.
Yes. Yes, that's what this is. Because it's precious, not just because of what it's written on, it's precious because of the talent and skill it takes to do this.
They would be special scribes.
This is a talent, right? This is something one learns and is an expertise, right? In the ancient world, it was very valuable. So this tells us something about how important this was. So here's a close up of what we have. You can see this is ancient Hebrew. So if you look at these letters, these are ancient Hebrew letters. So most of us can't read it. One of us can. One of us knows a little, but it's very different from Hebrew as we know it. This is proto Hebrew printing, and it's a text message. And what the dashes are what's missing, what we can't read, right? So,
fill in the blank.
Yes, it's a game of hangman. Like you have to guess at some of it, but there's enough there. Like when you see Ya'er here, Ya'er, something about Yud He Vav He, right? The Vav and the He are assumed. That's why they're in parentheses. Panav, when you get Ya'er, something about Adonai and Panav, it's obvious you're looking for the next word to be something about Elecha, right? Because may God's face shine, out into the ether? Doesn't make any sense. Upon you would make sense, right? If it's a blessing, if you're wearing it as an amulet, it's not may God's face shine into the cosmos, right? So, archaeologists and people who study this, they know to look for that, and so they can find hints of those letters. So we know from what we can read that this is something like the priestly benediction, if not the priestly benediction.
That's 7th century BCE. Would this have been the script that the early Torah would have been written in?
Yes, this is the script that early texts would have been written in. Absolutely. So, isn't that amazing? So, Rabbi Yehuda Berlin picks up on the fact that the blessing recited over the entire people is nevertheless stated in the second person singular, and interprets that each person be granted blessings appropriate to them. For one engaged in Torah, blessings for their study, for the one engaged in trade, for success in business, and so on. We can take the Netziv's point one significant step further. Divine blessing is not generic, but specific to each individual and her needs, dreams, and yearnings. God sees and cherishes us as individuals, and we pray for blessings accordingly. The Netziv's explanation of "and protect you," so may God bless you. The Netziv is saying it's in the second person singular. The priests are blessing the entire people, but they say it in the singular. May God bless you, you individual Israelite. The Netziv is saying stop, full stop. May God bless you. But what that is specific to each person being blessed, right? That's the first thing said. May God bless you, full stop. It's unique to whoever's receiving that blessing. And so now we're going to go and keep you, right? Protect you, which the Netziv says then goes further. May God protect you, lest the very blessing you receive turn into a stumbling block. The blessing of wealth, for example, can lead to greed or stinginess or lack of empathy, or it can lead to a perpetual state of anxiety that one does not have enough, or that one may lose what one has earned. Crucially, the Netziv points out even the blessing of Torah, learning, can yield rotten fruit. The Torah scholar can easily become arrogant or cause a desecration of God's name. So the Netziv is saying, may God bless you in whatever it is that you want for yourself. Nobody can tell you what that is except you. Full stop. And may God protect you from receiving the blessing that you want for yourself. May God protect you from what can happen when you, remember that thing, careful what you ask for you may surely get it, right? So may God protect you from getting what you want.
It's almost as if a better word to use rather than bless is may you flourish.
May you flourish?
Because what is right for one person will not necessarily be right for another person.
Right. So it's definitely person specific. So I love the Netziv's teaching, right?
This language sounds very much like would be something in an amulet that you wear. Protect you.
Yes.
Bad stuff.
Yes. It very much makes sense in a necklace, right? Or, in something that one would wear.
Is there a separate traveler's prayer? Like my dad used to have a traveler's prayer keychain. Is that separate?
Yeah. Yes. The traveler's prayer is rabbinic. I think it's based in Talmud. And it was when you started a journey, you would say the traveler's prayer. Different than this. Right. So a lot of people have it a lot of people. It became a thing to put it in a car mezuzah. So if there's a mezuzah in your car, and if you have a car mezuzah, it's not the mezuzah of the door. What's in it is not what's in the mezuzah. What's in a car mezuzah is the traveler's prayer. Right. And you'll see traditional Jews like open a prayer book to say the traveler's prayer as the airplane takes off. Yeah, it's for real. Like,
yeah, my dad had it on a keychain, and I think it's really big blue.
Right.
Can I do that? Is that weird, or is that like totally normal?
Keep doing it.
When you get on the plane, it's not the plane, and I can have everything, and look at it. Like, that's not crashed yet. So, like,
so clearly it worked because Margot has never been in a plane crash. So clearly it is efficacious, and that is a good thing to know. So maybe Margot, you can email us what it is we're supposed to say, since it's worked so well for you.
To find their spirit, their light, and to make it on as well.
Right. So it is.
Now I have to do what she did. Otherwise,
now you're going to crash if you don't do it. No, that's exactly right. So, right. That's why we come here, people. Right. We come here. That's right. That's right. Exactly right. So if we were to ask, why would you wear an amulet, right? Why wear an amulet? Like, how does that work? If it's a blessing that you're supposed to have done to you, for you, by God, why wear it? Because it's the human desire for protection. It's a very human desire to feel like we have some measure of control over what happens. And so this is just one way, right, that we do that. Huh? There's no priest around, right? But presumably, if this is from temple times, they're wearing these when there are priests around. It's not, right? They're not only relying on the priest to transmit this blessing, they're wearing it. For double insurance.
Down. Happy birthday. So around your neck, to bring them home now. Like, to me, this is also like an incantation, like bring them home now, right? So when we wear these things, Star of David, I'm not wearing it now because I crushed here, but I wear Shema Yisrael around my neck every single day. It just gives me the connection, to that it is. So it can be very beautiful and used beautifully in an enormous and deep act of love.
But what we read over and over in Torah, the sort of the emphasis on it being God who is doing something and not an incantation or a bunch of words. So isn't there a little bit of a disconnect between ambulatory power and the fact that it is God?
God is the one behind the ambulatory power.
Right. Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So,
okay.
God is the one behind the power of the words.
But it sounds to me as that we were saying that
it does not remove the human desire to have some control. So the rabbis made a living by writing Aramaic incantations on bowls, going into people's homes, saying the incantation and flipping the bowl over, thereby trapping the demons in the house under the bowl where they couldn't get out. So this was how rabbis made their living, was magic bowls that they would flip over in every home that from the early rabbinic period. We see bowls in the corners.
Oh, I want to try this.
So go online. You can now find it. You can now find it online. I used to have to look in my Trachtenberg book, but you can find it online. All of the incantations we have found.
But it sounds
to people
pagan. I mean, there's a little bit. There's an element of this.
Right? Duh. Like, of course. Like, all those pagan instincts, they don't go away. They don't go away. They are transmogrified into like kosher Jewish normative practice. Right? Now, nobody would do a magic bowl. That would be overtly pagan. But once upon a time, or magic, but once upon a time, right? And there's a whole thing in Talmud. There's a whole tractate we studied. A whole sugya we studied about what's the difference between magic and what the rabbis were doing. And they're very clear about it.
But we still do it. We still try to observe magical things. I mean, we won't walk under a ladder or the black cat.
Sure.
We still do it.
Because the God is behind it. That's the difference. There's always that.
That's right. Right. That's the defense, is it's God doing it, not me. Right. And right? It's God who affects this. But there's still a distinction for the rabbi, which I found fascinating, a distinction because magic is forbidden. Magic is obviously like hate, like it's forbidden. Like chas v'shalom, magic, absolutely not. Saying the right words and flipping the bowl at the right time is not magic, right? So it was fascinating to me. Like I did a whole paper on it in school because it was really interesting to me, like where they drew those distinctions, because they couldn't practice magic because you're put to death for that in ancient Israel. But there was lots of stuff that, right, gets
like what's up for it. Yeah.
And I find now after October 7th that I do want to wear my jewelry more. And for me, there is an element of, and this seems a little funny, like I'm proud to wear not that I wear my jewelry, but I like wearing it, but it's different than it was before October 7th.
Right. Which I think when you pointed out the hostage tag, I think it's different than this, because what I think that is, and what you're talking about, I think is about overt identification as an act of protest against victimhood, against anti-Semitism, against lest we forget, right? I think that's an act of overt identification of oneself. The way you were talking about the hair of the Nazir, I feel like people who choose to wear, I went to CVS to pick something up, and this beautiful kid, big, beautiful kid, is wearing a honkin' Jewish star.
I just bought one for my birthday.
And Dazzle!
At CVS.
At CVS. And so I leaned in. When he asked me for my name, I gave him my name, and then I said, it's Rabbi Amy Bernstein. And he said, really? And I said, really? And I said, I just want to tell you that I think it's hugely courageous that you choose to wear that. And I said it very quietly. You know how you're separated from the rest of the line? And I said, I'm very proud of you. And I'm not saying it's the right thing to do or a wrong thing, but I'm very proud because that takes a lot of guts. And he said, my dad is super proud of me. My mom's ready to kill me. Right? Like mom is not happy that he's wearing this honkin' Jewish star, right?
That's courage. And then a rabbi drops in on him and said, good job, kiddo. Like, I would be like, that's God.
He said, at the Malibu CVS, and the pharmacist said, what a beautiful Star of David you're wearing.
Right? Because so now it's a signaling that if you're with us, you're invited to say something.
Yeah.
Right? She commented on your star, not because it's beautiful, of course. She commented on your star to say, I'm with you.
Maybe not in the New York subways.
Oh, yeah.
No, right. I'm saying, right, because people know where they feel like they can do that and where they feel like it's just stupid. Right? Like, and I'm not going to tell anybody where that line is, but I'm just saying I think it's a little bit different than what we were talking about in terms of, you know, a sense of blessing or protection.
Just go back to the magic thing for a minute.
Sure.
So they didn't consider the Tumim and
the Urim and Tumim?
Urim and Tumim, the dice, so that wasn't magic.
Chas v'shalom.
Was that at the same period?
God forbid.
Was the magic?
That was God.
Dice.
That was God. The Urim and Tumim was an oracle by which one could ask a yes or no question of Yud Hey Vav Hey. The priest, only the high priest would ask the question. It was in the breastplate. So the high priest could say, should we go to war over this thing that just happened? It had to be a big thing. It couldn't be, should I get chocolate or vanilla? Like, it had to be a big question. But the priest would ask and it had to be of national interest. And then the high priest could go to Yud Hey Vav Hey and ask for a yes or no answer from the Urim and Tumim.
And what was it, a device that you wore?
It was like dice, wasn't it?
No. He pulled it out of it came up yes or no.
Yeah.
Essentially.
That's like a Ouija.
And so that's
an 8-ball.
Magic 8-ball. Except it's yes or no. So it had to be a yes or no question, and the Urim and Tumim show you yes or no. Shows the high priest yes or no. So
on the other hand?
No. Maybe that's rabbinic. That is rabbinic and evolves with Jewish culture later. But on the other, So,
this is a whole new thing. I've never heard of this.
You never heard about that?
yes. So, so that is not magic because it is God directly. It is asking directly God and restaurant. All right, we're going to
turn bowls over to catch armadillos.
which is a little different than
In Texas.
catching demons. Oh, sorry, Susan. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we talk about magic and how we don't believe it anymore. But if you think about it, we walk into a room and we push a button, lights come on. I mean, if you look at systems of magic and you look at electricity, okay, so we believe in electricity. It's not that different.
Huh. So I'm tempted, but we're at 10:58, so I'm not going to do it. But
someday,
I am tempted. Tonight at Shabbat on the Rocks, we can pursue that
I'll see you there.
that line of thinking. I'm going to close with Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. Protection, grace, peace. Right? Shmor, pain, shalom. These are God's blessings communicated by the priests. We are what we pray for. If you seek to understand a people, look at its prayers. The Jewish people did not ask for wealth or power. They did not hunger after empire. They had no desire to conquer or convert the world. They asked for protection, the right to live true to themselves without fear, for grace, the ability to be an agent for good in others, and peace, that fullness of being in which each of us brings our individual gifts to the common good. That is all our ancestors prayed for, and it is still what we need.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.